Alright, let's take it from the top. My name's Hannah. I cheated on my husband Jason. It's not something I'm proud of, but hey, life's messy. We had one of those whirlwind romances, no fairy tale, mind you. I got pregnant, and then we got hitched not because we were madly in love, but because it seemed like the right thing to do. Plus, Jason had a good job. He was bringing in the bucks, and living in the city seemed like a dream for our upcoming baby. Welcome to my channel, dear listeners. Jason is here. Click on subscribe button to support me. So, let's continue. Hannah is writing us about her hit. Our kid. Well, let's just say I thought he'd be the glue holding us together, making our life all cute and peachy. But boy, was I wrong. He was a full-time terror. Endless crying, breaking every toy we got him, refusing to eat anything we put in front of him. Let me tell you, dealing with a tantrum over peas is a special kind of hell. And the dish tossing. That kid could have been a pro baseball player with the way he pitched his plate across the room every mealtime. Alright, so, life was already a circus at home, but the real kicker. Jason barely showed his face around there. His work was like this demanding mistress, always needing his attention, and boy did she have it. All hours, every day. He'd come rolling in at 10 p.m., right when I was ready to pull my hair out from all the stress. You should have seen him, breezing through the door like he owned the world, barely noticing the utter chaos around him. I remember one night, he strolled in, tie askew, his hair a mess, and he had the audacity to ask, "What's for dinner, honey?" Like nothing was wrong. What's for dinner? I'd laughed, I was so close to the edge. I waved my hand around the hurricane of a house we lived in. Do you not see what's going on here, Jason? He just blinked at me, looking like a confused puppy. It was that moment I realized he was so far removed from our reality, from the mess and crying and dishes flying off the shelves. It was like he lived in a completely different world. And with him barely home, guess who had to deal with the constant tantrums, the mess, the crying? Yours truly. And let me tell you, there's nothing like a screaming baby to kill any romantic feeling. No candlelit dinners, no slow dances, not even a decent conversation. Forget about any form of intimacy. So, 6 months into this nightmare, I begged Jason to hire a nanny. Just for an hour or two, just so I could escape to these pottery classes I'd found. I needed something, anything, to take my mind off the madness at home. I started my pottery classes and found them to be a bit of a refuge. That's when I met Gregor. Big guy, warm smile, and hands that seemed like they were made to shape clay. From day one, he was kind to me, always helping me get the hang of the wheel, his hands over mine, guiding me to shape and mold the clay. We got on like a house on fire. He'd make fun of my disastrous attempts at pottery, and I'd hate him playfully. His laugh was infectious, a rich deep sound that filled the room, making everyone smile. But the way he'd look at me when he laughed, that was different. I'd catch him sometimes, his eyes lingering on me with a softness that I'd forgotten. One evening, after class, we were cleaning up the studio. I looked over at him, and he was all covered in clay, his hair sticking up in odd directions. He was trying to wipe his face with an equally dirty hand, only succeeding in smearing more clay over himself. I couldn't help but laugh. He looked at me, perplexed, and asked, "What? Is there something on my face?" I tried to control my giggles and pointed at his face, just a little bit of clay. His perplexed expression morphed into a grin, and he said, "Well, I can very well let it stay there, can I?" With that, he pulled me into a hug, smearing clay all over my clothes. We laughed and joked, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely happy. That's when I knew. I was falling for Gregor. It happened after our third class. The room was deserted, the only sounds were the soft hum of the kiln and our laughter. We didn't plan it, it wasn't calculated, it just happened. And for that moment, it felt like everything was right with the world. But then I had to go home. Home to Jason, the crying baby, and the mess. It was like a harsh dose of reality. A reminder that this happiness was fleeting, stolen in moments away from my real life. And boy, did that make me bitter. Walking through the front door that evening was like stepping into another world. It was a far cry from the carefree laughter and warmth of the pottery studio. I was greeted by the sight of our nanny hastily picking up toys, Jason with our son on his lap, his face a mask of exhaustion. I remember standing there, taking it all in. The chaos, the noise, the overwhelming mess. I looked at my son, his face smeared with food, his toys scattered around. I looked at Jason, a good man, a great father, but so absent from my heart. And then, something in me snapped. "I want a divorce," I blurted out. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to me. I can't do this anymore, Jason. Jason looked like I'd slapped him. What are you saying, Hannah? I'm saying, I'm not happy, Jason. And I don't think you are either. We need to end this. The next month was a whirlwind of arguments, tears, and paperwork. But when it was all said and done, I was free. Free to start anew, to follow my heart. And my heart was pointing me in Gregor's direction. With Gregor, life was different. It was far from perfect, but there was love, warmth, and shared laughter. We got married not long after. No, he wasn't as well off as Jason. But he was there for me, he made time for me, he loved me. And I loved him. It was a simple, happy existence. The kind of life I'd always wanted. As for my son, I made the difficult decision to step back. I thought it was best for him, for me. Jason, ever the father, took over full-time care of him. It hurt, but I told myself it was for the best. And life moved on, with new hopes, new dreams, and a new love. Update 1. Well, it's been 2 years since I last spilled my heart out here. 2 years of ups, downs, and now, well, everything has come crashing down. My life with Gregor, my happy ever after, it didn't turn out as I expected. I guess reality has a cruel way of crashing in when you least expect it. Gregor started drinking, a glass of wine here, a bottle of beer there, but before I knew it, it became a regular thing. I didn't mind at first, I mean, who doesn't enjoy a good drink after a long day? But it was when he started lashing out at me that I knew things were spiraling out of control. One night, after he downed one too many, he turned on me. You're nothing but a cheating wife, Hannah. His words stung, more so because I'd been nothing but loyal to him. Gregor, I've never cheated on you. His laugh was harsh, his eyes devoid of the warmth I'd fallen for. Yeah, that's what they all say. We divorced soon after. Unlike my divorce from Jason, this one was messy, full of accusations and bitterness. We had nothing to split, no shared assets, no children tying us together. All we had was the echoes of our failed marriage, a harsh reminder of the dreams we'd once had. I now rent a small apartment in Atlanta, a far cry from the life I once had. As I sit here, alone in this too quiet apartment, I can't help but think of my son. How he's grown, what he looks like now, if he ever thinks about me. I will call my ex and schedule a meeting with him. Hope everything will be good. Update 2. A few weeks ago, I decided it was time to see my son. I'd been wrestling with the idea for months, my mind always swirling with questions. What did he look like now? How much had he grown? Would he remember me? Finally, I plucked up the courage and arranged a meeting with Jason. Walking into the park where we agreed to meet, my heart pounded in my chest. The sun was shining, children were laughing and playing, but all I could focus on was the sight of Jason and our son. He looked so different, so grown up. My baby was no longer a baby. Jason looked up and our eyes met. There was a certain coldness in his gaze, an unfamiliarity that stung. I walked over, a lump in my throat. Jason. He nodded, offering a curt, Hannah. I knelt down in front of my son, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey there, buddy. He looked at me with confusion, then turned to Jason. Daddy, who is this? My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. My own son didn't recognize me. Jason didn't miss a beat. This is Hannah, an old friend of mine. An old friend. Is that what I was now? Time passed in a blur after that. I tried to engage my son in conversation, tried to connect with him, but he was distant, distracted. He kept glancing over at his nanny, who had now become Jason's wife, seeking the comfort of familiarity. It was clear she was his mother now, not me. On my way home, I felt like I was in a daze. My apartment in Atlanta, once my sanctuary, felt cold and uninviting. I sat down, staring blankly at the walls. I had lost everything that mattered: my husband, my son, my family. I had chased after love, after happiness, and all it brought me was loneliness and regret. This is where I am now, broken and alone. My once promising life, shattered into pieces. I wish I had made different choices. I wish I could go back and fix things. But all I can do now is learn from my mistakes and try to rebuild my life, one piece at a time. I just hope it's not too late. Wow, reading Hannah's story really stirred me up. This lady really thought she could just up and leave her family, her kid, and there wouldn't be any blowback. She ditched her husband, the guy who was busting his chops working late every day for them, just because she got a bit of attention from a bloke at her pottery class. Man, talk about selfish. Then she's surprised when her own kid doesn't remember her. What did she expect? She chose to walk out of his life. You can't just abandon your kid and expect them to keep a place for you in their heart. That's not how it works. That kid's better off without her, if you ask me. Jason sounds like he's doing a damn good job as a dad. Found a woman who actually cares about being a mom and loves that boy. That's what that kid needs, not a woman who ditches him because she's not happy. And now she's sitting alone in her apartment, regretting it all. Well, too little, too late, lady. She made her bed, now she's gotta lie in it. And her son not remembering her. That's Jason's best revenge. I hope the kid's new mom turns out to be everything Hannah wasn't. He deserves a real mom, someone who puts him first, and doesn't run off chasing some midlife fantasy. As for Hannah, well, let's just say karma's a real pain, isn't it? Okay, well. This is our story for today. You can